Recently, the government of India has released a document that most people will never read, but almost everyone will suffer the consequences of. It might sound a bit dramatic, but yes, economics usually is dramatic, just without the background music. This document is called as the Economic Survey of India 2026. It is not a budget, it does not announce any freebies, and yet it quietly decides who gets growth, who gets inflation, and who gets blamed next year.
In India, the budget session began this week. On Sunday, February 1st, the Finance Minister will present the annual budget, and today the Prime Minister set the tone for it. He gave a statement outside Parliament, and his message was clear: India's reforms drive will continue.
आत्मविश्वास भरा हिंदुस्तान आज विश्व के लिए आशा की किरण भी बना है, आकर्षण का केंद्र भी बना है.
All right, shifting our focus, Finance Minister of India, Nirmala Sitharaman, will present the Union Budget 2026 on the 1st of February amid one of India's most challenging global and domestic economic settings.
Here's the funny part. Politicians quote it, markets react to it, and UPSC asks questions from it. But very few people actually understand what it is trying to tell us. Today we will decode the Economic Survey 2026, the way it was meant to be read, and as a post-mortem of Indian economy, and as a warning letter about India's future. What is the government proud of this year? What is it defending nervously? And more importantly, what is it avoiding talking altogether? Because in economics, what is not said is often the most important than what is said. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you won't just know about the economic survey, but you'll understand why economic survey says particular thing. Hello, my name is Preetpal Singh and you're watching Perspective. Now, the Economic Survey is the Ministry of Finance's flagship document. It provides a detailed report card of Indian economy over the preceding financial year. Now, it outlines the government's perspective on country's macroeconomic performance, also sectoral shifts in the country and emerging challenges that requires immediate policy intervention by the government. Now, while this document is released by the Ministry of Finance, it is authored by the Economic Division of Department of Economic Affairs. Now, the preparation is led by Chief Economic Advisor of our country, whose unique analytic lens often introduces new economic concepts and reform-oriented narratives into the public discourse in our country. Now, the question is, why this survey is a must-read? See, first of all, for macroeconomic clarity. It provides the most authoritative data on GDP growth, inflation, fiscal deficits, all other important data in our country. For policy foundation, it is very, very important. It explains the why behind the government's decision. So if you want to know that why the government has taken a particular decision, Economic Survey is the book. And it links economics theory to the practical fiscal policy of our country. And not just this, it provides sectoral insights to us as well, and detailed analysis of the performance of agriculture sector, industrial sector, services sector in our country is written in this economic survey. And not just this, it provides a forward-looking outlook as well. And it provides a growth forecast for the upcoming years, which is very crucial for investors as well, for policymakers and for students also. Now, you can think of economic survey as the diagnosis and the union budget as its prescription. And the economic survey, it identifies where economy is lagging and where it is thriving. Now, the budget allocates the funds and introduces the taxes which are necessary to address those findings. But economic survey is altogether a very different document. Economic survey tells us about the performance of a country, economic performance of the country in the preceding financial year, which is why budget and economic survey are completely different documents. In independent India, economic survey for the first time was presented in the year 1950-1951. And during this period, economic survey was merged with the budget itself, which is why budget and economic survey used to be presented together. But the change happened in the year 1964, when economic survey was separated from the budget, because the policymakers thought that there needs to be a thorough analysis about the economic performance of the country in the preceding year, and only after that, budget should be presented. So it will be good for policymakers as well, and it will be good for economic analysis of the country as well, which is why from 1964 onwards, budget and economic survey were presented separately. Firstly, economic survey was presented, and then the budget of India was presented. Now, coming to this year's economic survey, that is economic survey of 2026, we'll be talking about 10 key takeaways and points from this year's economic survey. Now, there are numerous other points as well, but we will be fixated on 10 major points. Let's start one by one. First, let's discuss about the overall state of Indian economy and how Indian economy performed in the last 1 year. See, India remained the fastest growing major economy for the fourth consecutive year in the world, despite global headwinds such as geopolitical tensions, which we have seen around, trade fragmentation, and financial instability as well. As per first advance estimates, the real GDP growth for the financial year 2026 is projected at 7.4%, while the gross value added growth is estimated at 7.3%, which is indicating a broad-based economic expansion of our country. Potential growth rate of Indian economy is assessed at around 7%, with the financial year 2027 real GDP growth rate projected between 6.8 to 7.2%. Again, a very, very important part. Now, the second key takeaway is in relation to consumption and investment. Private final consumption expenditure in our country, it grew by 7% in the financial year 2026. And it reached around 61.5% of the GDP, which is the highest level since the year 2012. So private final consumption expenditure has grown a lot, and it reflects strong domestic demand in our country. Also, rural consumption has improved due to good agricultural performance, while urban demand was supported by stable employment and tax rationalization reforms which we have seen in our country. Alongside this, gross fixed capital formation, that is GFCF, it rose by around 7.8% in our country, and it remained steady for 30% of GDP, which was driven by sustained public capital expenditure and revival of private investments in our country. So that was the second takeaway. Now coming to the third takeaway, which is around fiscal developments. Now central government's revenue receipts, it increased by 9.2% of the GDP in the financial year 2025, and it was up from the pre-pandemic average of around 8.5%, which reflects improved tax buoyancy, which simply means that the direct tax base has expanded, with income tax return filers increasing from 6.9 crore people in financial year 2022 to 9.2 crore people in the financial year 2025, which indicates better compliance, which indicates better formalization of Indian economy. Also, not just this, gross GST collections from April to December of 2025, it stood at around massive 7.4 lakh crores, which registered a 6.7% year-on-year growth. And effective capital expenditure of the center, it rose to about 4% of the GDP in financial year 2025, which reinforces growth through infrastructure creation in our country. And not just this, India has been able to reduce its general government debt to GDP ratio by 7.1 percentage points since 2020, while maintaining high public investment. So now the fourth key update can be seen in relation to monetary management and banking sector. See, the banking sector showed strong resilience, with the gross NPAs, that is non-performing assets, declining to 2.2% in September of 2025. A multi-decadal low, this low we haven't seen. And the net NPAs and net non-performing assets declined even further to 0.5% itself, which has reflected improved asset quality in our country and stronger balance sheets. And not just this, credit growth of scheduled commercial banks has accelerated to 14.5% year-on-year by December 2025, which is supporting economic activity in our country to a very great extent. Now, the fifth crucial point is in relation to external sector performance in our country. Now, India's share in the global merchandise exports, it has nearly doubled. From 1% it was in 2005 and 1.8% in 2024, while services export shares, it rose from 2% to 4.3%. And total exports in our country reached a record USD $825.3 billion. And this happened in the financial year 2025 and was driven mainly by the service exports. And service exports, they touched an all-time high of around $387.6 billion US dollars, growing by around 13.6%. And India remained the largest recipient of remittances globally, with the inflows of around 135.4 billion US dollars in India in the financial year 2025, which is approximately 3.5% of India's GDP. Foreign exchange reserves in our country, they also rose to around $701.4 billion as of January 2026, which is providing an import cover to us for about 11 months and covering 94% of the external debt. The next key takeaway is in relation to inflation trends. Now, India has recorded the lowest average CPI, that is Consumer Price Index inflation, for April to December 2025 since the beginning of the CPI series in our country. And it is just 1.7%. CPI inflation from April to December of 2025 has been 1.7%. A sharp decline in inflation was mainly due to moderation in food and fuel prices, and also strengthening household purchasing power. Now coming to the next takeaway, it is in relation to infrastructure and connectivity. Central government's capital expenditure, that is CAPEX, increased over 4 times since the financial year 2018. It has reached around 11.21 lakh crores in the financial year 2026. And not just this, high-speed highway corridors, they expanded nearly tenfold to 5,364 kilometers. Railway network also expanded with the near total electrification. India became the third largest domestic aviation market, with airports increasing from 74 to 164 by 2025. And not just this, power sector reforms, they've led to discoms recording a positive PAT of 2,700 crores in financial year 2025 for their first time. Now, one major takeaway can also be seen when we see the social sector of our country. That means education, healthcare, and employment. Now, if we see school enrollment, it has improved with the gross enrollment ratio exceeding 90% at primary and upper primary levels. Also, expansion of premier institutions can also be seen. 23 IITs, 21 IIMs, and 20 AIMS, including overseas IIT campus, have been constructed. And India has achieved a faster reduction in maternal and child mortality than the global averages since 1990. Employment, of course, we can say 15 years and above, those who stood at 56.2 crores person in Q2 of financial year 2026. And this is the new job creation which will be supported by manufacturing and services. Also, eShram portal is there, which has registered over 31 crore unorganized workers, with women forming 54%. See, two metrics, that is poverty reduction and rural development in multidimensional poverty index, has declined sharply from 55.3% to 11.28% as per Niti Aayog. The social service expenditure, it increased to 7.9% of the GDP in the financial year 2026. And there is a scheme known as Swamitva scheme, which improved rural asset ownership through drone-based property, right? Also, a key takeaway is in relation to the strategic vision for our country as well. From Swadeshi to strategic indispensability, the survey advocates a disciplined Swadeshi through a three-tier framework, focusing on strategic urgency, feasibility, and cost effectiveness. Emphasizes reducing input cost, strengthening advanced manufacturing, and integrating India into the global value supply chains. The long-term goal is to make India strategically indispensable in the global economic system. The Economic Survey of India 2026 is not just a celebration document, it is a reality check document for our country. It tells that where India is wrong, and it tells that India is wrong but not invincible, and it is resilient but not risk-free, which is why we need to be optimistic but cautiously so. See, growth numbers can look very impressive to us. Macro indicators are stable in our country. India's global positioning is improving, but beneath the headlines, the survey quietly reminds of three things. Growth must create jobs. Not just charts, reforms must reach the ground, not just remain in the PDF. And any demographics are a dividend only if skill and productivity gives peace. See, the real importance of economic survey is not for the policymakers alone. It is for the students, it is for the entrepreneurs, it is for the investors, and it is for the citizens as well, because it shows what kind of economy India is building and at what cost. Economic survey tells us why these decisions are being taken, and that makes it one of the most honest documents the government ever releases. India's economic story is still being written. The Economic Survey 2026 is just the latest chapter in this. The real question is, are we reading it carefully enough or not? So I would leave you with this particular thought. I hope you would enjoy the session. All the very best. Have a beautiful day. Thank you.